Chapter 2531. Madam Ames replied, Mrs. Knowles is already asleep. Knollys responded with a faint hum and asked, has she eaten? Madam Ames answered truthfully, she did eat but vomited after that. Her appetite is still not too good. Knollys frowned and hurried upstairs. When he came to the bedroom, the lights in the bedroom were off. He only turned on the bedside light because he was afraid that the chandelier would wake her up as it was too bright. Daisy lay on her side on the bed, sleeping very restlessly. Knollys walked to the edge of the bed, sat down, and reached out to pat her. However, she woke up as soon as she felt his caress. Knollys smiled. Haven't you fallen asleep? Daisy sat up slowly. You've come home. Yeah, I was dealing with some affairs. He threw his coat on the chaise longue. He did not hide the fact that he went out on a dinner appointment on purpose, but he did not think it was necessary to talk to her about the meal. Daisy leaned against the head of the bed and stared at him. Did you go to a dinner appointment with someone else? He paused and looked back at Daisy. Daisy then approached him, smelled him, and raised her brows. You drank some wine and reek of a woman's perfume. It's Armani's white tea perfume. Isn't it the same perfume as the one used by the sexy and gorgeous-looking female assistant from earlier today? Knollys rubbed his forehead and chuckled out of slight anger. Do you have the nose of a dog? I didn't even get close to her, and you can already smell her perfume. Hey, you wouldn't even give me the truth if I didn't recognize the smell, would you? He placed his palm on the back of her hand and coaxed her softly. Daisy, I indeed ate dinner with her, but it's not what you think. Daisy turned her head away and did not utter a single word. Knollys hugged her. Don't be angry, but do remember to give me a call before you go to the company in the future. Don't get close to her. Daisy lowered her eyes. Is the company busy? He was slightly startled and looked down at her. Why do you ask that? Daisy lowered her head. I don't know that you're busy, and I have no idea what's happening in the company. I always think that you'll be able to stay at home with me more often. Do you think that I'm very petulant? Daisy, you won't let me do anything, and you won't tell me anything. To them, I'm only a clingy wife who only knows how to make your life difficult. Daisy burst into tears. But I don't want to do so either. Ever since I became pregnant, I haven't been able to keep my emotions under control, and I dislike myself for becoming fat and ugly. I hate this. Boo-hoo-hoo. Knollys sealed her lips with a kiss. After a while, he gently wiped away the tears on her cheek with his fingertips. I don't dislike you now, and I don't think you're troublesome or clingy. Daisy pushed him away and lay down with her back to him. I'm going to sleep already. I'm in a bad mood, so don't mess with me. Knollys gave off a helpless smile. After taking a shower, he climbed onto the bed carefully so that he would not disturb her. After lying down, seeing that Daisy was already asleep, he stretched out his hand and took her into his arms. Good night, love. At noon the next day, Mia called Freya and found her way to the villa according to the address given to her. She was shocked when she saw the luxurious villa in front of her. Isn't this a little too grand to be true? One of the servants brought Mia into the living room. Freya was sitting on the couch, drinking tea while waiting for her. You've come. Mia returned to her senses and walked toward her. Freya asked the servant to pour Mia a cup of tea. Take a seat. After sitting down, Mia asked cautiously, why did you ask me to come to you? Freya chuckled and put down her teacup. I can lend you some money to cover your brother's surgery expenses. Mia was taken aback. What? That's right. That's what you heard. I know you want to help your brother recover his eyesight so he can live a normal life. I'm willing to help you. Chapter 2532. Mia pursed her lips and lowered her head. I've done something really bad to you, and you're still willing to help me out. First of all, you did it for your younger brother, didn't you? Although it's wrong to steal someone else's wallet because you want to heal him, I can see that you're not hopelessly bad. Freya placed a card on the table and moved toward her. There is $30,000 here, and I'll lend it to you. I'll then introduce you to a job after your brother's surgery is over and his eyesight is restored. You can slowly return the money to me after you start working. Mia picked up the card and looked at her incredulously. Are you really willing to help me? Freya smiled. I have lent you all the money that you need, and you can now contact the hospital to reschedule the surgery. What's there left to doubt? Mia got up abruptly and knelt on the ground. Freya stood up instantly and helped her up. What are you doing? Get up already. Mia looked up at her with tears streaming down her cheeks. You're such a good person. Hoo, I'll do whatever you want me to do in the future. I'll even kill someone for you if that's what you want. She laughed. What are you thinking? I don't want you to do such illegal things. You must promise me that you'll never steal another wallet, no matter what. Mia got up with Freya's help and wiped her tears with her sleeve. I promise I'll never steal a wallet again in the future. If I ever steal again, I'll get hit by a car as soon as I step outside. Geez, touch wood, take back what you just said. I believe you. Freya patted her on the shoulder, thought of something, and asked her, by the way, don't you have parents? Mia shook her head. I'm an orphan. I was forced to leave the orphanage to work before I turned 18. I met my brother in the orphanage. He is very poor and was abandoned by his parents at the orphanage's gates on a snowy day 8 years ago. Freya's brows creased. It turns out that they're not even biological siblings. I never thought that you'd be so kind to him even though you two aren't even related by blood. Because he was abandoned by his parents, just like me. When Mia mentioned her relatives to Freya, her eyes looked cold as it seemed that she had no feelings for the parents who had abandoned them. Freya could not help but take another look at Mia. She seems to be in her early 20s and has dyed her hair red. Although she's dressed like a young female ruffian and looks unrestrained and arrogant, the kindness that she possesses deep down can still be seen. At least she didn't abandon her brother, who has no blood relationship with her, and she stole money in order to cure his eyes. Freya noticed that Mia had wheat-colored skin and some tiny freckles on her cheeks. Her facial features looked well-defined and beautiful, especially her blue eyes. It was just that dyeing her hair red really conflicted with her appearance. I think you should dye your hair back. Huh, Mia stroked her hair. Isn't it pretty? Freya was helpless. I'll be introducing you to a job. If you dress up like this, who will dare to hire you? You must look good as soon as you dye your hair back. It was the first time Mia got praised for her looks, so she felt a little embarrassed, but she nodded. Okay, then I'll dye my hair back when I get back. 3 days later, Freya invested $1,500,000 in the nursing home to establish the Hope Foundation. The nun wrote a letter of appreciation and entrusted Mia to send it to Freya. After reading the content of the appreciation letter, Freya felt warm deep down. As for the nun, it was obvious to her that her prayers and hard work over the years must have been heard and now rewarded. Mia looked at her. The manager has already hired a contractor to renovate the nursing home. With this fund, the manager and others finally don't have to work so hard. Chapter 2533. Freya placed the letter down and looked up at Mia, who had dyed her hair back. Flax-colored hair suits you quite well. Mia smiled and said, as you advised, I removed the red dye, and it became like this after the red faded. Has your brother's surgery been scheduled? She nodded with a smile. Yeah, it's been arranged, and the surgery will take place in a few days, so he doesn't have to wait so long anymore. Freya got up, walked toward her, and placed her hands on her shoulders. Then I'll bring you to a job interview now. Mia followed her, chattering and asking along the way, what's the job? Where are we going for the interview? Will it be difficult? Freya stopped in front of the car, opened the door, and let her get in first. You'll know when you get there. Oh, okay. She got into the car obediently. Soon, the car arrived at Blue Valley Manor. Mia stuck her face against the car window, stared at the huge courtyard, and was once again shocked. What she had been seeing nowadays had really shown her the lifestyles of the top 1% and their attitude toward life. Freya led her out of the car. A few servants were trimming the garden in the courtyard. When they saw 2 women arriving at the manor, one of them got up and asked, May I know who you're here for? Freya answered, We're here for Mrs. Knowles. The servant hurriedly responded, Please give me a minute. I'll let Mrs. Knowles know about your arrival. When the servant entered the manor, she happened to run into Madame Ames, who was walking down the stairs. Seeing her rushing in, Madame Ames asked, "What's wrong?" The servant replied, "There are two ladies outside, and they're here looking for Mrs. Knowles." Madame Ames was stunned for a moment and looked out of the window. "I don't know either of them. Are they Mrs. Knowles' friends?" She gave it a thought for a while and ordered, "Let them in." After the servant reported their arrival, Freya took Mia into the living room. Mia looked around, feeling extremely dazzled. She could not imagine the identity of the people who lived here. Madame Ames scrutinized their appearances. "May I know who you are?" Freya smiled. "I'm Miss Pruitt, and I'm here to meet Mrs. Knowles. Please let her know about my visit." "Pruitt? Could it be that she's from the Pruitts?" Madame Ames forced a smile. "Mrs. Knowles hasn't been feeling too well recently and has already gone to rest. She's not feeling well." Freya narrowed her eyes. "Have you called a doctor here to see her?" "No, it's just that Mrs. Knowles is currently pregnant, so she's recently been a little more irritable and lethargic than usual." Freya took a closer look at Madame Ames too. "Who's the one who hired you?" Madame Ames lowered her head. "It's Mr. Knowles. I'll go upstairs and see her." Freya walked past her and wanted to go upstairs. However, Madame Ames stopped her immediately. "But Mrs. Knowles said that she doesn't want to be disturbed. You'll be making my job difficult if you do so." At that moment, Daisy's voice came from upstairs. "Can't even my friends come to pay me a visit?" Madame Ames subconsciously panicked. "Ma'am." Coincidentally, Freya caught a glimpse of her nervousness. She did not say anything but gazed at Daisy. "Daisy, are you okay?" Daisy came downstairs. "I'm fine. I came out once I heard your voice." Freya supported her as they walked, looked back at Madame Ames, led Daisy to the couch, and sat down. "I know you're bored, so I've found you an employee that can accompany you." Daisy was confused. Freya asked Mia to come over and introduced her to Daisy. "Her name is Mia, and she's a nice young lady." Mia scratched her cheeks, smiled, thought of something, and quickly bowed. "Hello, Mrs. Knowles. It's nice to meet you." Daisy smiled at her and asked Freya in a low voice, "Why would you bring her here?" Freya leaned closer to her and replied in a low voice, "Trust me, this young lady is a friendly one. Plus, I don't think the woman that Knowles hired for you is reliable." Chapter 2534. Daisy was taken aback and took a glance at Madame Ames. "But Knowles is the one who hired her. She stopped me from meeting you just now, so don't you think it's strange? Logically, whenever there's a guest, she should notify you, the mistress of the manor, no matter what. But she didn't even notify you, and she was already certain you would drive us away. I can almost feel that this woman is up to something. A woman's sixth sense is known to be very accurate. How could an employee have the right to decide on her employer's behalf? I don't believe that Knowles has given her such authority." Daisy pursed her lips tightly and did not utter a single word. Freya sat upright and took her hand. "All right, this girl is looking for a job, and I'm not in need of an employee now. That's why I'm introducing her to you. Don't worry, I have an eye for a great employee." Daisy naturally trusted Freya, so she nodded. "Okay, I'll let her stay." Freya got up and walked toward Mia. "You'll be working here from now on." After that, she whispered in her ear, "Remember to keep an eye on Madame Ames behind you at all times. Report to me whenever she acts suspiciously." Mia had always been a smart person, and she understood what Freya meant in an instant. "Understood, leave it to me." After Freya left, Madame Ames walked up to Daisy. "Ma'am, do you really want to keep her? But we're not in a shortage of servants. She's an assistant that my second sister-in-law introduced to me." Daisy looked up at Madame Ames with a calm expression. "Is there a problem with my decision to let her stay? But you have to get Mr. Knowles's permiss." Daisy stood up abruptly. "I know Knowles is the one who hired you, but I'm his wife, and I have a say in who to hire too. Are you saying that what I've decided to do is incorrect?" Madame Ames lowered her head. "Of course not, ma'am. You've misunderstood. Do your job, and don't worry about me doing my part." After saying that, Daisy walked to the stairwell and looked back at Mia. "You can come up with me." Mia nodded with a smile. "Okay." Madame Ames watched as they went upstairs and pursed her lips. That woman arranged for someone to work here all of a sudden. Things are getting more and more difficult. She quickly took out her cell phone and sent Cecilia a text message, and soon received a reply from her. I believe that you can handle it well. You do know what to do, don't you? Madam Ames was stunned. It was obvious that Cecilia wanted her to come up with another plan. In the afternoon, Mia accompanied Daisy to go on a stroll in the courtyard. Seeing that Daisy looked rather sullen, she blinked and came up with an idea. Mrs. Knowles, can I tell you a joke? Daisy was taken aback and nodded. Mia began by telling a short story. Once upon a time, there was a little boy who was practicing the violin while his father was reading the newspaper. And along with the sound of the boy's violin, his pet dog began to bark and howl. Finally, his father could not bear it any longer and complained, "Can't you play something that the dog doesn't understand?" After a few seconds of silence, Daisy burst out, chuckling. Seeing her smile, Mia continued, I have another one. A guy went to see his psychologist alone and asked, Doc, I keep having these alternating, recurring dreams. First, I'm a teepee, then I'm a wigwam, then I'm a teepee again, then I'm a wigwam, and then I'm a teepee again. These dreams are driving me nuts. What's wrong with me? The psychologist replied very calmly. It's simple, you're too tense. After saying that, Mia made a speechless expression to enhance the joke's effect. Daisy's chuckle intensified, and she seemed to realize that Mia was trying to cheer her up. Thank you. Mia patted her chest. You're welcome. It's my job to make you feel happy. Chapter 2535. Daisy sat on a bench in the garden and asked Mia to sit as well. Will you miss your family when you're staying abroad? Mia froze for a moment and then lowered her gaze. I have no family. I'm so sorry. I didn't know about that. Mia waved her hand immediately. It's okay. You don't have to apologize to me. I've already gotten used to it. I'm an orphan, and I don't have much of an impression of my parents now, so even if others mention them around me, I won't feel offended at all. Daisy leaned back into the back of the bench. Since I got pregnant, I've rarely contacted anyone from outside this manor. You're pregnant? Mia was surprised. Daisy squinted and grinned. Can't you see it? Mia took a short glimpse at her belly. Ah, I can see it now. The dean said that pregnancy takes a huge toll on a woman's body. You'll get emotionally unstable, and your body will become bloated and fat. You'll also lose appetite and can't sleep well at night, but you don't look very fat. Daisy chuckled. Do I really not look fat? Mia shook her head and then said, perhaps it has something to do with your physique. When I was a volunteer at the orphanage, a woman got pregnant there, and I didn't even notice that she had a big belly when she was 8 months in. Really, I wouldn't lie to you. Maybe it's because she looked very petite and she loved wearing loose clothes. We only thought that she had put on some weight and only got to know that she was pregnant after she had given birth. Mia also leaned back and sighed. It's a pity that the woman was abandoned by her man in the end, and she had to abandon the baby at the orphanage because she couldn't afford to raise the child. Daisy was about to ask her something when Madam Ames interrupted them. Ma'am, Mr. Knowles has returned. She responded calmly, okay. Madam Ames took a glance at Mia and left. Knowing that Daisy had not been very happy recently, Knowles returned early today and bought Daisy her favorite dessert and a box of prunes while he was on his way back. He passed the dessert and prunes to the servant. Madam Ames walked into the living room. Sir, a lady who calls herself Miss Pruitt brought a woman over today and said she would stay here with Mrs. Knowles from now on. Knowles turned his head. Miss Pruitt is my wife's second sister-in-law, so I trust the person she introduced. I know that the Pruitts are his close relatives, but he doesn't even doubt the person that Miss Pruitt left here. My job is getting harder and harder as the second goes by. I've only managed to gain his trust, got hired as the steward, and had all the maids in the family placed under my control. But here comes an extra person, and she's been arranged to stay here by Miss Pruitt. I think she will not only refuse to help me out but will even ruin my plans along the way. I must live up to Miss Taylor's high hopes. I know you trust Miss Pruitt, but the woman that Miss Pruitt brought here is of unknown origin, so I'm worried that Miss Pruitt might fall into someone else's trap. Immediately after saying that, Madam Ames added, I just went to the courtyard to see ma'am, and I heard that woman telling her something about someone pregnant getting abandoned. Ma'am has been emotionally unstable ever since she got pregnant, so wouldn't that make her imagination run even wilder? Seeing Knolles's sullen expression, Madam Ames heaved a sigh of relief inwardly. As long as he becomes suspicious of that woman and objects to her staying here, she won't be allowed to stay any longer. I must remove all obstacles for Miss Taylor. Daisy and Mia stepped into the living room, chit-chatting and chuckling out loud. Knowles took a glance at the woman walking beside her and frowned. Seeing him, Daisy stopped in front of him with a smile and raised her eyebrows. Knowles, you're back so early. Don't you have dinner appointments to attend to? Knowles stared at her face, feeling a little helpless. Since the other night, she's been bringing up the phrase, dinner appointment, over and over again. It seems that she's very jealous about that night. Chapter 2536. Knowles wrapped his arms around her waist. I won't go out for dinner anymore. I'll come back to accompany my wife daily from now on. Daisy froze for a moment and then gently pushed him away. How can you not attend dinner appointments? You're the director and president of the company. If I don't let you go, I really can't imagine what others will think of me. I'd surely get into trouble if someone else were to say that I'm not a considerate wife. He frowned. Who would dare to say so? How could I know? Daisy went to the dining table and sat down. Seeing the prunes on the table, she picked up one and put it in her mouth. Sour food is still the best. Knowles walked to her side, propped his hands against the surface of the table, leaned over, stared at her, and laughed. Are you still angry? She replied, No, what's there to be angry about? Knowles asked the servant to bring the dessert over. I bought you something that you love. Daisy raised her head. You purposely bought it for me. Knowles stroked her hair with his long fingers. Apart from you, who would have the power to make me make my way through a few stores just to get my hands on your favorite flavor? Daisy hooked her index finger, motioning him to come closer. Seeing that, Knowles lowered his head, and she pecked him on the cheek. This is your reward. His smile intensified as he finally managed to coax his wife. Only then did Daisy think about Mia. By the way, Mia will work here in the manor from now on. I'm very satisfied with her performance. Knowles took a glance at the woman named Mia indifferently. Mia lowered her head and could not help but feel just how scary this man was. Madam Ames' expression changed slightly. But ma'am, this woman is of unknown origin. What do you mean by unknown origin? Is it because she's an orphan? Madam Ames, are you discriminating against orphans? Daisy interrupted her with a smirk. Madam Ames gazed at Knowles. Seeing that Knowles had not spoken, she felt a little anxious. I'm only trying to look out for your well-being, ma'am. Not to mention that the manor isn't short of manpower now. Apart from that, you're now pregnant. If someone were to put harm in your way, things would become very troublesome. Everyone here is getting paid to work in the manor. Who would do anything to harm me? Daisy peeled the prune casually. Are you telling me that I don't even have the right to keep someone here? After saying that, she stared at Knowles pitifully. Knowles, how about you swap me out as the mistress of this manor? Look, none of the people that you hired will even listen to what I say. They are all your employees to start with, and all they do is work together to come at me, making me feel like an outsider. Madam Ames broke into a cold sweat and did not dare look at Knowles. The servant stood on the side cowardly and did not utter a single word. Knowles narrowed his eyes as he knew that Daisy would not say these words for no reason. After a short while, he lifted his hand and rubbed her on the head. If you want to keep her, you can keep her. I'll leave her employment to you. Sir, my wife is the mistress of this manor. Do you people have any questions about this? Knowles's gaze swept across the room and stopped on Madam Ames. Madam Ames shook and lowered her head. No, I don't have any questions. I have to think of another way now. Madam Ames walked up to Mia and was about to give Mia orders when Daisy said, There's no need for you to arrange chores for her. She's not required to take orders from you. Madam Ames was astonished. She stared at Daisy in surprise and at the same time, asked Knowles for his opinion. Knowles glanced at Daisy. He noticed that she was exhilarated, so he agreed to her arrangement. She can do anything she wants. Madam Ames gnashed her teeth secretly and wondered if Daisy knew something. It looks like I'll have to report this to Miss Taylor. Back in the bedroom, Knollys picked up Daisy and put her down on the bed. What has happened within these few days? Are you not very satisfied with Madam Ames? Why have you been targeting her recently? Daisy looked at him. Are you satisfied with her performance? Knollys thought for a while. She's great at housekeeping. At least the house has been kept in an orderly manner when it's under her management. Chapter 2537. Yeah, she does have the ability to be a marvelous housekeeper. Daisy lowered her head. Freya came to see me today, but she stopped her from seeing me. And when I said that I wanted to keep Mia here, she insisted that I had to first ask for your permission. I know you're the one who hired her, so it's normal for her to listen to what you have to say. But I feel like a person who's being excluded, and I can't even do what I want. Knollys's heart tightened, and he picked her up and placed her onto his thighs. Why would you think about such things? He approached her, and his breath brushed her cheek. If you don't like it, you don't have to listen to her. You can do whatever you want, but the bodyguards must still be allowed to follow you when you go out. After saying that, he hugged her tightly. I'm really afraid that you'll get ill from boredom. Daisy, I don't want you to be unhappy. And if you're really unhappy, then I'll. Daisy looked at him. Then what? She shook him. Spill it, or I'll be really upset this time around. Knollys lay on his back on the bed. I'll contribute my face. You can do whatever you like to it. Daisy lay down beside him and caressed his face with her fingertip. Then I'll put something on your face later. I guess that will do it. He turned his head, stared at her, and squinted. What are you talking about? I was talking about kisses and caresses. Could this silly girl be thinking? Daisy's grin widened. Makeup. Knollys was at a loss for words. Daisy kissed him. What do you think? Seeing his wife acting like a spoiled child, who in the world could resist that look of hers? Knollys turned over and kissed her on the lips. You really know when to push your luck, huh? The next day, Daisy was woken up by the noisy voices downstairs. When she went downstairs, she heard Mia arguing with two other servants. Have you people lost your minds? The chef is actually on leave today. What a coincidence. Mia rolled up her sleeves and pointed at them. Except for the chef, does none of you know how to cook? You don't even know how to cook a simple Western breakfast. Then how did you secure your job here? One of the servants could not take it any longer. It's not like we're in charge of the kitchen. Madam Ames claimed that the chef is on leave for some reason, and he won't be back until noon. Mia crossed her arms. Oh, it turns out that Madam Ames is the one who let him off. So does this mean that Mrs. Knowles will have to skip breakfast and can only wait for lunch? The two servants exchanged gazes and lowered their heads. If you're dissatisfied with this arrangement, you can talk to Madam Ames. It's her decision anyway. Mia's rage rose gradually, and she was about to say something to reprimand them when she was interrupted by Daisy. We should have more than one chef at home, shouldn't we? Did all of them ask for a leave? Mia walked toward Daisy, still complaining on her behalf. Ma'am, are you seeing this? They're not even showing you any respect, are they? You're the mistress of the manor. What is it with this attitude? One of the servants stepped forward. Ma'am, we really don't know about this. It's all arranged by Madam Ames. She claimed that you usually sleep until noon, so even if the chefs were to arrive at noon, it wouldn't affect you. Daisy narrowed her eyes. Indeed, I've been waking up very late ever since I got pregnant. But waking up earlier or later isn't the main focus here. As a housekeeper, Madam Ames has the authority to adjust the kitchen employees' work schedules without permission. This is really unprecedented. Perhaps Mia's right. She doesn't even respect me at all. She stopped in front of the servant. Where's Madam Ames? The servant replied, Madam Ames doesn't come to work until noon too. After hearing this, Mia rebuked angrily. She's a housekeeper and actually gave herself such a privilege. Is she getting paid to serve her employer, or is she getting paid to enjoy her life in a luxurious manner? Chapter 2538. The servant looked up at Daisy cautiously. How about I give Madam Ames a call and ask her to come over now? Daisy scoffed. There's no need for that. I don't think I have the authority to order her around. After making such a sarcastic comment, Daisy walked to the kitchen alone, but Mia immediately stopped her. What are you doing? I'm going to make my own breakfast. How can it be? Mia pulled her out and made her sit at the dining table. If the chef isn't here, you have me. I, Mia Keaton, was once lucky enough to work as a part-time sous chef in a restaurant. Don't worry, although I haven't cooked in a while, I promise it'll still taste good. She swaggered into the kitchen and started messing around with some ingredients. The two servants were worried that she would light the kitchen on fire, but because of Daisy's presence, they did not dare to say anything. They looked at each other and arrived at the same solution. The other servant hurried to the yard, took her cell phone out, and called Madam Ames. Madam Ames, come back quickly. Mrs. Knowles has woken up, and she's very upset. We'll all be fired if Mr. Knowles learns about this. On the other end of the call, Madam Ames was taken aback when she received the call from the servant. She actually woke up at this hour. She gnashed her teeth. Okay, I'll head back right now. After hanging up the phone, she walked to Cecilia's side. Miss Taylor, I have to go back right away. Cecilia put down the cup of coffee in her hand. What's the hurry? You're the housekeeper that His Royal Highness hired. Can she even fire you for such a trivial matter? Madam Ames shook her head and gave off a wry smile. Miss Taylor, you don't know how much Mr. Knowles loves her. He'll believe in anything that she says. Mr. Knowles will surely fire me if she tells him about my negligence. Cecilia's gaze looked somewhat ruthless. Love, trust me, she's only getting all the love because of the fetus in her womb. After saying that, she took a tiny bottle of liquid out of her bag and handed it to Madam Ames. The latter was inwardly startled, and her instinct told her that the liquid in the bottle was definitely something heinous. Miss Taylor, what are you? Find a way to add this medicine into your employer's food. Don't worry, it won't kill her. Madam Ames took the bottle of medicine tremblingly, and beads of cold sweat started perspiring on her forehead. Miss Taylor, are we really going to do this? Becoming a mole in the manor was already extremely terrifying, especially since Daisy had recently painted a target on her back. Perhaps she has already noticed something. So if I were to spike her food at this moment, and let's not forget that there are so many surveillance cameras in the manor. I'll be caught. Cecilia got up, walked toward Madam Ames, placed her hand on her shoulder, and approached her ears. Don't forget, I know what you've done. So if you don't do as I say, you should know that you'll be apprehended and sentenced for stealing secrets of that aristocratic family, right? Madam Ames' back stiffened. She froze in place and did not dare to move. Before Mr. Knowles even put out an ad for a steward, Miss Taylor had already used this secret to blackmail me. She needs a woman who will work for her and lurk beside the princess. If I were to refuse to help her now, the secrets that I stole while working as a housekeeper in another aristocratic family would be made public. When that time comes, I'll not only face prison but also offend all the aristocrats that I've worked for. My life will fall into hell when that happens. Madam Ames clenched the bottle in her hand and bit her lip. I'll do as asked. Cecilia gave off a coquettish smile. Good, that's what I want to hear. Don't worry, as long as I become the princess, I'll treat you well. When Madam Ames returned to Blue Valley Manor, she placed the medicine in her bag as millions of thoughts flashed across her mind, and she could not help but feel a little nervous. Stepping into the living room, she saw the servants gathered outside the kitchen. She was then startled when she heard the sound of someone stir-frying in the kitchen. Isn't the chef coming in at noon? However, it was none other than Mia who was cooking in the kitchen. Soon, Mia came out of the kitchen with breakfast, which was a bowl of noodles. Chapter 2539. The bowl of noodles looked very good and smelled great. Considering that Daisy had been having a poor appetite during her pregnancy, Mia had specially placed 2 slices of lemon on the noodles. She walked up to Daisy with the noodles. Ma'am, look. Daisy smelled the fragrance of the ingredients contrasting with that of the lemon, picked up the fork, and could not wait to taste it. The lemon offset the greasiness of the soup, and its sweet and tangy taste blended well with the rich and aromatic broth. Daisy's appetite was stimulated, and the cooked noodles all looked al dente and did not break, making the dish look and taste very refreshing. Daisy took a big mouthful while Mia stood aside and watched her eat. "How is it? Does it taste good to you?" Daisy nodded and gave her a thumbs up. "This is great. I don't feel sick now. How did you do it?" Even the servants could not believe it. After all, the chefs Nales had hired were head chefs who once worked in hotels. However, Daisy had been having a poor appetite because of her pregnancy, so no matter how delicious the food was, she would always vomit after eating only a few mouthfuls. But she actually finished the whole bowl of noodles that Mia cooked, and she did not even let the broth go to waste. Mia replied with a smile, "I realize that you like to eat sour food, so I was wondering if adding a few slices of lemon to your food would improve your appetite, but I'm very glad that you like it." Daisy stared at her. It seems that Freya does have an eye for a fabulous employee. This girl isn't only smart but also very observative. "Madam Ames, you've come back." Only then did one of the servants notice that Madam Ames was standing behind them. Madam Ames returned to her senses and walked up to Daisy's side. "I'm very sorry, ma'am. I've neglected my duty this time around." Before Daisy could speak, Mia had already responded to her apology. "Oh wow, the housekeeper actually knows that she has neglected her duty. I thought you had given the kitchen crew the day off on purpose in order to starve your employer." She deliberately emphasized the second half of the sentence. Madam Ames' expression slightly changed, but it was not obvious enough for others present to discover it. "You have my word that this won't happen again." Daisy got up slowly. "Since you're already here, the kitchen crew won't be in charge of my meals from now on." Madam Ames was astounded. Daisy then glanced in Mia's direction. "You'll be in charge of my meals, and for that, I'll double your pay." When Mia heard that her wage would be doubled, her eyes lit up. She was very excited, but at the same time, she must not let her employer down. "Don't worry, you can leave it to me." Daisy turned around and went upstairs. Mia started to clean up the bowl and silverware and went into the kitchen, whistling a tune. Madam Ames told the servants to get back to their respective chores. She then went back to work on her own while staring at the person moving around in the kitchen. "Since you're the one who started it, don't blame me for what's about to happen to you." At Yunus Tech, Gideon looked out the office through the blinds, then walked to Nales's desk and sat down. "Bro, that bitch hasn't done anything ever since she came here to work in the company. The only two things she's done throughout this time are drinking the company's coffee and sitting at her desk like a statue as if she's some goddess, waiting for others to come to her shrine to worship her. I really can't stand her." After Cecilia joined the company, all she did was reassign all the tasks that were delegated to her to someone else. She acted as if she was a queen and others were only here to serve her. Nales flipped through the documents without even lifting his gaze. "If you were the son of the Taylors, you could ask the others to do everything for you too." Gideon clicked his tongue. "I don't think I've done enough good to deserve her. She's just another one of those spoiled daughters of an aristocrat, isn't she? Sooner or later, she'll still have to get married to some random aristocrat, won't she?" Nales raised his gaze. "So, do you plan to marry her?" "Bro, that's not funny. I can't handle such a profligate woman." "Okay, let's get down to business." Nales put the documents down and leaned back in the chair. "You followed her around today. Did she meet someone?" Gideon leaned forward and whispered, "She seemed to have gone out to meet a woman who's about 30 years old, but I didn't get to see her face clearly. That bitch's bodyguards were guarding outside the private room, so although I pretended to be a waiter who wanted to deliver them their food, I wasn't allowed to bring it in. So I only took a look into the room through the door and saw a woman." Chapter 2540. Nales narrowed his eyes as if thoughts were flashing across his mind. "She met a woman." Gideon rubbed his chin. "I don't know what those two women were talking about, but their actions looked mysterious, so it's definitely not something good." There was a knock on the door, so Gideon got up and opened it. It was Cecilia. Cecilia ignored Gideon and walked in with some documents. "Your Highness." She handed Nales the documents, but he did not take them from her. Just place them on the desk and leave us. Cecilia smiled, leaned over, and approached Nalles with her upper body. Your Highness, must you be so unfeeling to me? I admit that I shouldn't have used my father to restrain you. It was my fault, and I apologize. Gideon, who was standing by the door, shuddered. This woman is giving me goosebumps when she speaks so coquettishly. Nalles lifted his unconcerned gaze and did not react to anything that she did. Cecilia hooked his tie with her long finger. Your Highness, do you know that the more indifferent you are to me, the more possessive I'll be? I'm bound to win your heart. By the way, I wonder if you want to have a private session with. I wonder what Lord Taylor would think if I were to send this video to him. Nalles turned his computer monitor toward her, and it showed Cecilia that what she was doing was being captured by a surveillance camera. Cecilia's expression changed instantly, and then she noticed that there was a camera on Nalles's desk and froze for a moment. I like this tie very much. Nalles took off his tie and threw it into the trash can. It's a pity that someone else has touched it, and I dislike getting my attire filthy. Facing his humiliation, Cecilia straightened up and tried to hold back her emotions. Your Highness, are you sure you want to do this to me? My attitude depends solely on your actions. The whole country knows that I have a wife, and the Taylors actually have the guts to send you here to seduce me. It turns out that this is how the Taylors get things done. Miss Taylor, could this be the ladylike character that you're known for? All you do is try to lure a man into cheating on his wife. I'm sorry, but I don't think I can handle someone like you. Cecilia clenched the hands that were hanging by her side. You're not married. The absence of a wedding ceremony doesn't mean she and I aren't husband and wife legally. If the Taylors insist on meddling in my family affairs, that's fine by me. Nalles stood up and approached her, giving off a devilish smirk. But don't let me find you doing anything unfavorable to the Taylors. Otherwise, I don't mind turning you into another Donald Matthews. Cecilia was startled. Are you threatening us? Nalles's expression looked stern and determined. If you think this is a threat, then it's a threat. Cecilia scoffed and said with a presumptuous attitude, do you think that's possible? Your mother has just taken over the throne as the new queen, and she still needs the Taylors' support in the cabinet. Even the late king had to show my grandfather some respect. But you, Nalles grabbed her by the neck and strangled her apparently, his patience had already been depleted. Gideon saw this scene and hurried in, bro. Cecilia's face flushed from being strangled, and she was about to suffocate. She could not see any emotion in Nalles's eyes, which looked as calm as an abyss as if they could engulf anything. Lord Taylor is such a shrewd man, yet I really didn't expect him to have given birth to a fool like you. I might have thought too highly of you. He shoved her away. Cecilia was wearing high heels, so she lost her balance and fell to the floor in embarrassment. The commotion attracted the staff outside, but no one dared to say anything. Nalles looked down at the gasping woman on the floor. Since you aren't taking what I said last time seriously, we'll wait and see. Gideon stepped forward. Yes. Nalles straightened his suit. Throw this woman out. If the Taylors come here and create a scene, tell them to come to me directly.